I died at 52 in a sterile hospital room, a living widow for 30 years. My husband's final words to me weren't a tearful goodbye, but a chilling confession. I never wanted you. Ella told me to keep you distracted. Then, my eyes snapped open. I was 22 again. The rain lashed against the reinforced glass of my room at St. Thomas's Hospital in London, blurring the lights of the city I had once thought was mine to conquer. It was 2026. I was 52 years old, and I was dying. The terminal stomach cancer had hollowed me out, stripping away the flesh until I was nothing but a fragile skeleton wrapped in a thin layer of pallid skin. But the physical agony in my abdomen was a dull ache compared to the suffocating emptiness that had defined my entire adult life. My husband, Arthur Pendleton, stood near the door. He was entirely out of place in the sterile, antiseptic environment of palliative care. Dressed in a bespoke charcoal Brioni suit, his silver fox hair perfectly styled, he looked like a man waiting for a delayed flight, completely detached from the tragedy unfolding in the hospital bed before him. He was checking his Patek Philippe watch. He hadn't held my hand once. Looking at him, my mind drifted back to the very beginning. The day after my engagement, my sister married. It had been the scandal of the 1996 social season in Kensington. While I was still breathless from Arthur slipping a 3-carat diamond onto my finger, Ella, my beautiful, volatile, endlessly selfish older sister, eloped with Harrison Gallagher. Harrison was a notoriously ruthless shipping magnate, a man 25 years our senior, whose bank accounts rivaled sovereign nations. Ella's sudden wedding eclipsed my engagement entirely. My parents were frantic. The society papers were ablaze, and my own joy was immediately shoved into the shadows. But I had brushed it off. I was in love. Or, at least, I thought I was. I lived as a living widow for 30 years. After our beautiful, hollow wedding, Arthur moved me into Winding Oaks, a sprawling, isolated Georgian estate in Surrey. It was a golden cage. Almost immediately, his late nights at his investment firm turned into weekend conferences in Geneva, week-long summits in New York, and sudden emergencies that required his constant absence. When he was home, he was a ghost. We slept in separate wings. My desperate attempts to win his affection, the elaborate dinners I learned to cook, the lingerie I bought, the endless efforts to be the perfect society wife were met with cold indifference. If I reached for him, he would flinch. If I wept, he would walk out of the room. We never had children. I spent 3 decades tending to acres of hydrangeas I loathed, hosting charity galas for women who pitied me, and slowly going mad in the deafening silence of an empty mansion. And then there was Ella. She and Harrison were frequent fixtures in our lives. Ella played the role of the fabulous, wealthy matriarch, showering me with patronizing pity. She would arrive in Surrey in her chauffeur-driven Bentley, dripping in Gallagher money, and tell me how brave I was to tolerate Arthur's demanding career. I was so blinded by sisterly loyalty and my own profound loneliness that I never saw the truth. I never noticed the lingering glances between my husband and my sister across my own dining table. Until the very end. The heart monitor beside my bed beeped with a sluggish, failing rhythm. I coughed a wet, rattling sound and turned my sunken eyes toward Arthur. "Why?" I rasped, my voice barely a whisper against the hum of the medical machinery. 30 years, Arthur. You never looked at me. You never touched me. Why did you marry me?" Arthur finally stopped looking at his watch. He walked over to the edge of my bed, his face devoid of any grief, any pity. His eyes, the same pale blue that had once made my heart race at 22, were utterly dead. "You're dying, Catherine," he said smoothly, his tone conversational, as if remarking on the weather. "I suppose there is no harm in the truth now. It hardly matters." I gripped the thin cotton blanket, bracing myself. My husband said, "I never loved you. I never wanted you. I only married you because Ella told me to keep you out of her way." The words hit me like physical blows, knocking the remaining breath from my lungs. "Ella?" I choked out. Arthur offered a cold, humorless smile. "We were in love, Catherine, Ella and I. But I was a junior associate with massive student debt, and she had expensive tastes. When Harrison Gallagher showed interest in her, she saw the opportunity of a lifetime. Billions of pounds. But she couldn't bear to let me go. He leaned in closer, and I could smell his expensive cologne, a scent that made my decaying stomach churn violently. She needed me close, Arthur continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But Harrison was paranoid. He had his security teams vet everyone in her circle. She couldn't just have a young, single male best friend hanging around. It would have raised too many questions. So, she engineered a solution. She introduced me to her naive, desperate to please younger sister. The room began to spin. The monitor's beeping grew erratic. She orchestrated our engagement, Arthur said, delivering the final fatal wound. Once I was firmly cemented as your husband, I became family. The harmless brother-in-law, Harrison never suspected a thing. Whenever I told you I was in Geneva, or New York, or working late in the city, I was with Ella. Your entire marriage, your entire life, Catherine, was nothing but a smokescreen for our affair. You were just a convenient alibi. A horrific, agonizing sound ripped from my throat, a scream of pure, undiluted agony that had been building inside me for 30 years. My life was a lie. My loneliness, my tears, my wasted youth, it had all been a calculated sacrifice for my sister's greed and my husband's ambition. I had funded their romance with my suffering. You monsters, I gasped, blood flecking my lips as my heart began to give out. I curse you. I curse both of you to hell. Arthur straightened his cuffs, looking completely unfazed. Goodbye, Catherine. I need to go. Ella is waiting downstairs. He turned his back on me and walked out the door. He didn't even look back as the monitor flatlined, letting out a long, piercing wail. My vision went black, consumed by a rage so deep and profound I felt it tear my very soul apart. I died not of cancer, but of a broken, betrayed heart. A sharp, stinging sensation across my cheek jolted me from the darkness. I gasped, sitting bolt upright. My lungs pulled in vast, greedy gulps of air. There was no rattling in my chest. There was no agonizing pain in my stomach. The heavy, metallic smell of the hospital was gone, replaced by the faint, comforting scent of lavender and lemon polish. Catherine! Breathe, for heaven's sake! It was just a nightmare! I blinked wildly, my vision swimming into focus. Sitting on the edge of the bed was Ella. Not the heavily Botoxed 60-year-old Ella I had last seen visiting me in the hospital, but a radiant 24-year-old Ella. Her blonde hair was styled in a voluminous blowout, popular in the mid-90s, and she was wearing a silk emerald green robe. I recoiled violently, scrambling backward against the headboard until my spine hit the mahogany wood. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Don't touch me!" I shrieked, pulling the duvet up to my chin. Ella looked offended, pulling her hand back. All right. Don't be dramatic, Kathy. You were thrashing about and screaming in your sleep. I just came in to wake you. I suppose it's the pre-wedding jitters, though technically you're only freshly engaged." Engaged. My eyes darted around the room. The floral wallpaper, the heavy velvet curtains, the brass vanity mirror in the corner. This wasn't the sterile hospital room in 2026. This wasn't the sprawling, empty estate in Surrey. This was my childhood bedroom in our family townhouse in Kensington. I looked down at my hands. They were smooth, plump, devoid of the purple bruising from endless IV drips. On my left ring finger sat a heavy, cold piece of metal, a 3-carat diamond ring. My breath hitched. I scrambled out of bed, ignoring Ella's bewildered protests, and ran to the vanity mirror. Staring back at me was a 22-year-old girl. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright, my dark hair tumbling down my shoulders in thick, healthy waves. I looked at the digital alarm clock on my bedside table. Next to it sat a daily calendar. The 14th of April, 1996. It was the morning after my engagement party. the very day Ella was meant to run off and marry Harrison Gallagher. I clutched the edge of the vanity, my knuckles turning white. The memories of the hospital, Arthur's cold eyes, his chilling confession, the flat line of my own heart were seared into my brain like branding iron. It wasn't a dream. It was a previous life. A life I had lived, suffered through, and died in. And somehow, by some miraculous, cruel twist of fate, I had been thrown back to the exact starting line of my 30-year nightmare. Honestly, Catherine, you're acting like you've seen a ghost, Ella sighed, standing up and crossing her arms. You should be glowing. Arthur Pendleton is quite the catch. Mother is already on the phone with the florist, trying to secure dates for September. Hearing Arthur's name from her lips sent a surge of adrenaline so potent through my veins that I thought I might faint. I looked at my sister through the mirror's reflection. I saw past the innocent, teasing smile. I saw the calculating gleam in her eyes. She already knew. She and Arthur had already planned it all. I was standing in the very room where my execution was being ordered, looking at my executioner. A manic, hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, but I swallowed it down with the force of 30 years of suppressed agony. If I lost my temper now, if I screamed the truth, they would just call me insane. I would be committed, and they would still win. No. I had lived a lifetime as a victim. I wasn't going to play that role again. I turned around to face her, forcing the muscles in my face into a mask of serene calm. You're right, Bea, I said, my voice shockingly steady. Just a nightmare, a really terrible nightmare, but it's over now. Ella smiled, a predatory, self-satisfied smirk that made my stomach churn. Good. Now get dressed. We have a lot of planning to do. Actually, I said, leaning against the vanity, feigning casual interest, I was wondering what your plans were for today. We barely spoke at the party last night. You disappeared quite early. Ella's eyes flickered, a tiny tell. Her hand moved to adjust the belt of her robe, a nervous habit I now recognized. Oh, you know me. Not one to steal the spotlight on my little sister's big night. I had a headache. Today, I'm just running some errands in the city. Errands? Like packing a suitcase and taking a cab to the Chelsea registry office to marry a billionaire while her secret lover anchored himself to her idiot sister. I see, I murmured. Well, I think I'll go back to sleep for a bit. My head is pounding. Rest up, darling, Ella said, walking toward the door. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Arthur is a lucky man. You'll make him a wonderful, devoted wife. The door clicked shut behind her. As soon as she was gone, I ripped the 3-carat diamond ring off my finger. I didn't just toss it on the table. I hurled it at the wall with all my strength. It bounced off the floral wallpaper and rolled under the bed. The grief of my past life was rapidly burning away, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. I was reborn, armed with the future. If I simply broke off the engagement today, Ella would still marry Harrison, and she and Arthur would find another way to be together. They would still get the billions. They would still win. I didn't just want to survive this time. I wanted to tear their world apart, piece by bloody piece, just as they had torn mine. I knew the schedule. Ella's secret ceremony with Harrison Gallagher was set for 2 p.m. at the Chelsea registry office. Arthur, playing the part of the dutiful fiancé, was supposed to take me to lunch at noon at the Savoy, keeping me blissfully distracted while the trap snapped shut around me. I walked over to the landline phone on my desk and dialed the number for Arthur's flat. He picked up on the second ring. Arthur, I said, injecting just the right amount of breathless adoration into my tone. Catherine, darling, his smooth, practiced voice purred through the receiver. The sound of it made my skin crawl. Did you sleep well, my love? My love. The lie tasted like poison in my ear. I did, I lied smoothly. But Arthur, I'm so sorry. I can't make lunch today. I've woken up with a dreadful migraine. I can barely open my eyes. There was a slight pause on the other end. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. This threw a wrench in their perfect schedule. Are you sure, darling? I was so looking forward to celebrating properly, he said, his voice laced with fake concern. I'm positive. I just need to lie in the dark. I'll see you tomorrow." "All right. Rest well, Catherine," he said. He hung up quickly, likely eager to call Ella from a payphone to update her on the slight change of plans. I slammed the receiver down. I had 3 hours. 3 hours to change the trajectory of my entire existence. I opened my closet, bypassing the pastel, innocent dresses I used to favor, and pulled out a sharp, tailored black trench coat. I dressed quickly, slipping into flat, sensible shoes. I wasn't going to stop the wedding. I was going to let Ella marry Harrison. But I was going to make sure Harrison Gallagher knew exactly what kind of viper he was taking to his bed, and I was going to make sure Arthur went down with her. The living widow was dead. It was time for the executioner to take the stage. I knew Arthur's habits better than I knew my own heartbeat. For 30 years in my previous life, I had observed his meticulous, obsessive need for control. He never threw anything away, believing his own arrogance made him invincible. He kept trophies. Stepping out into the crisp April air of 1996, I hailed a black cab and gave the driver the address of Arthur's bachelor flat. 42B Harrington Gardens, South Kensington. Arthur assumed I was incapacitated in a dark room with a cold compress over my eyes. He had no idea the woman he thought was a naive, pliable pawn was currently walking up to his front door with the ruthless clarity of a woman who had already attended her own funeral. I knew about the loose brick behind the potted fern, where he kept a spare key, a secret I only discovered in my late 40s when clearing out his old belongings. Slipping the brass key into the lock, I let myself into his immaculate leather and mahogany-scented apartment. My stomach gave a phantom twinge of cancer pain, a dark reminder of why I was here. I didn't have time for sentimentality or hesitation. I went straight for the false bottom of his oak desk drawer. Inside was a heavy velvet lockbox. The combination was Ella's birthday, 0812. The lock clicked open instantly. The contents were a masterclass in betrayal. There were dozens of photographs. Polaroids of Arthur and my sister entangled in luxury hotel beds in Paris, Milan, and Geneva. Dates scrawled on the bottom matched the exact weekends Arthur was supposedly at investment summits and Ella was on girls' trips. Worse still were the financial documents. Arthur was a junior associate drowning in university debt, yet there were receipts for a diamond tennis bracelet, a bespoke Cartier watch, and a staggering sum transferred into a joint offshore account in the Cayman Islands under both their names. Ella had been funneling Gallagher's engagement money directly to Arthur to fund their secret life, building their nest egg before the wedding had even taken place. I swept the entire contents of the lockbox into my leather satchel. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't breaking. The Catherine who would have wept over these photos had died in street. Thomas's hospital. I felt nothing but the icy thrill of impending execution. I left the flat exactly as I found it, hailed another cab, and headed straight to the financial heart of London, Lombard Street. The headquarters of Gallagher Shipping stood like a fortress of glass and steel, an intimidating monument to Harrison Gallagher's wealth. Harrison was a notoriously private, fiercely intelligent man. In my past life, he had terrified me. He was ruthless, known for dismantling rival corporations without a second thought. Today, I was banking on that exact ruthlessness. I marched into the lobby, bypassing the receptionist entirely, and headed straight for the private elevator banks, guarded by a mountain of a man in a tailored suit. "Excuse me, miss. You can't go up there," the security guard said, stepping into my path. "My name is Catherine," I said, my voice projecting an absolute, unshakable authority that made the man blink. "I am Ella's sister. I need to speak with David Sterling, the head of security, immediately. Tell him I have a security breach regarding Mr. Gallagher's 2 p.m. appointment at the Chelsea Registry Office." The mention of the highly classified secret wedding time was the golden ticket. Within 3 minutes, I was sitting in a soundproof, mahogany-paneled office opposite David Sterling, a man whose eyes were as sharp as cut glass. "Mr. Gallagher is a very busy man, and he is preparing for a private engagement," Sterling said smoothly, analyzing me like a threat. What is this about, miss? I didn't waste breath on preamble. I unbuckled my satchel and dumped the contents of Arthur's lockbox directly onto his immaculate desk. The Polaroids of my sister and my fiancé spread out like poison ivy. The financial receipts landed on top. It's about corporate espionage and monumental fraud, I said coldly, leaning back in my chair. My sister isn't marrying Mr. Gallagher out of love. She's marrying him to secure a limitless bank account for herself and her lover, my fiancé, Arthur Pendleton. They've been siphoning his pre-wedding gifts into offshore accounts. They plan to keep Arthur in the family as my husband to maintain their affair indefinitely under Mr. Gallagher's nose. David Sterling's professional facade shattered. He picked up the photographs, his jaw tightening so hard I could hear his teeth grind. He looked at the bank statements, recognizing the account routing numbers. He was a man paid handsomely to protect Harrison Gallagher from vultures, and he had let two of them walk right into the inner sanctum. "Wait here," Sterling growled. Gathering the evidence, he stormed out of the office. 10 minutes later, the door opened. It wasn't Sterling who walked in. It was Harrison Gallagher himself. He was an imposing figure, 55 years old, with piercing slate-gray eyes and an aura of absolute, terrifying power. He held the Polaroids in his hand, his knuckles white. He looked at me, expecting to see a weeping, hysterical young woman. Instead, he found me staring back at him with a gaze as hard and unyielding as his own. "You found these today?" Harrison asked, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that sent shivers down my spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. "Yes," I lied effortlessly. "I suspected something was wrong. I broke into his flat. I couldn't let you walk into a trap, Mr. Gallagher. Nor could I allow myself to be chained to a man who planned to use me as an alibi." Harrison studied my face, searching for a lie, searching for the naive girl Ella had undoubtedly described me as. He found a woman forged in 30 years of solitary confinement. A slow, terrifying smile spread across the billionaire's face. It was the smile of a predator whose trap had just been handed to him. "The ceremony is in 1 hour," Harrison said softly, checking his Rolex. "Sterling tells me Arthur is planning to drop by the registry office to offer his support to the bride." "He is," I confirmed. "They think they've won." "Then we shouldn't keep them waiting, Catherine." Harrison offered me his arm. "Let's go attend a wedding." The Chelsea registry office was supposed to be the quiet, discreet setting for Ella's triumph. As I stepped out of Harrison's armored Maybach, the afternoon sun felt different. It felt like a spotlight. Harrison and I walked into the private waiting room together. Ella was standing near the window, a vision in a vintage, pearl-white Chanel suit, sipping a glass of champagne. Arthur stood a few feet away, leaning against a mahogany pillar, looking incredibly smug in his tailored suit. They were the picture of high society elegance, completely unaware that the ground beneath them had already collapsed. When the oak doors swung open and Harrison walked in with me on his arm, the blood instantly drained from both of their faces. The champagne flute slipped from Ella's hand, shattering against the marble floor. "Catherine?" Arthur choked out, his facade cracking instantly. "What? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in bed." "My migraine cleared up remarkably fast, Arthur," I said, my voice echoing in the dead silence of the room. I let go of Harrison's arm and stepped forward, the heels of my shoes crunching over the broken glass of Ella's champagne flute. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Ella looked at Harrison, her eyes wide with manufactured panic. "Harrison, darling, what is she doing here? This was supposed to be our private moment." Harrison didn't say a word. He simply reached into his breast pocket and tossed the stack of Polaroids onto the antique coffee table between them. They landed with a heavy, damning thud. The top photo featured Arthur and Ella on a balcony in Milan, completely naked, Arthur's hands tangled in her blonde hair. Arthur stumbled backward as if he had been physically struck. He bumped into the pillar, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. Ella let out a strangled, pathetic gasp, covering her mouth with her hands. I have terminated the offshore accounts, Ella, Harrison said, his voice terrifyingly calm, devoid of any shouting or theatrics. The funds you embezzled have been seized by my legal team. Your belongings have been removed from my penthouse and left on the street. You are entirely cut off. Harrison, please, Ella shrieked, dropping the aristocratic act, falling to her knees among the shards of glass. It's a lie! She doctored those. Catherine has always been jealous of me. Save your breath, Harrison cut her off, his eyes filled with absolute disgust. He turned his gaze to Arthur, who was sweating profusely, his hands trembling. And you, Mr. Pendleton, I have just concluded a phone call with the senior partners at your firm. They were very interested to hear about your involvement in defrauding a major client. You are unemployed, blacklisted from every financial institution in London, and my lawyers will be filing criminal charges for extortion by the end of the day. Catherine, please, Arthur begged, turning his pathetic, watery eyes to me. I love you. This was all a mistake. She made me do it. I looked at the man who had condemned me to 30 years of agonizing solitude, the man who had watched me die without shedding a single tear. I felt no pity. I felt no sorrow. You never loved me, Arthur, I said, repeating the very words he had spoken to me on my deathbed. You never wanted me. You only engaged me to keep me distracted. You were just a convenient parasite. I pulled the 3-carat diamond ring from my coat pocket, the ring I had thrown across my bedroom mere hours ago. I didn't hand it to him. I tossed it onto the floor, letting it roll into the pile of broken glass and scandalous photographs. Keep it, I sneered. You're going to need the money for your legal defense. I turned my back on them. The sound of Ella's frantic sobbing and Arthur's pathetic, panicked breathing filled the room. But it was just white noise to me now. They were broken. Their grand, multi-billion-pound scheme was reduced to ash in a matter of hours. The golden cage they had built for me had become their own prison. As I walked out of the registry office and into the bright London sunlight, Harrison Gallagher fell into step beside me. You are an extraordinarily dangerous woman, Catherine, Harrison remarked, looking at me with a profound, newfound respect. You dismantled 2 lives before lunch. Most people would have crumbled. I have a low tolerance for betrayal, Mr. Gallagher, I replied smoothly, looking out at the bustling city. The air tasted incredibly sweet. My body was young, healthy, and vibrating with potential. Call me Harrison, he said, offering a rare, genuine smile. I happen to have an opening for an advisory position at my firm. Someone with your exceptional investigative skills and total lack of sentimentality could go very far. I looked at the billionaire, the man who was supposed to be my sister's ticket to ultimate power. In my past life, I was a victim of their ambition. In this life, I was the architect of their ruin. I'll have my lawyers review the contract, Harrison, I said, a slow, triumphant smile curving my lips. The living widow was dead. Catherine the Conqueror had just arrived, and I had 30 years of future knowledge to build an empire of my own. My life was finally, truly, mine. If Catherine's story of ruthless karmic justice and reclaiming her life kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button. Share this incredible tale of betrayal and revenge with your friends to see whose side they take. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more gripping, real-life drama stories every week. Drop a comment below. How would you have handled Arthur and Ella?